discuss moving to the cloud. It's something that everyone's talking about. There's obviously a bit more of a demand recently to get more out of your systems and cloud PCs as well, which is going to be a very interesting topic, which I'm really excited to discuss.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for giving up some of your valuable time to come and have a chat with us today. My name is Ed Dale. I am the Learning and Development Director of Illuminate Learning. We work very closely with partners such as CSG, and effectively we're here to talk about the value and the benefits of Microsoft Azure and, of course, the very exciting Windows 365, a new way of introducing virtualization into your organization. So really looking forward to getting into this one.
Thank you, Ed, for that great introduction. Do you know what? I'm really glad I let you introduce yourself then, because I would have not done that justice at
Oh,
all. That
right.
was a brilliant introduction. So yeah, today's speakers, like Ed just said, and obviously myself here in the background to give you some answers about how CSG can support you. Anyone new joining us today? Just a little overview about who CSG is. So we're a trusted IT and security partner to around 400 SMEs in Wales and England. And I know that you guys have heard it many times now, but I will not stop talking about it this year because we are celebrating 40 years providing cybersecurity and IT solutions to businesses, which is going to be really exciting. Lots to come more. So I know we had the rebrand and the new website to celebrate that. And thank you, customers, for all of your support with that transition. And really nice to see some good comments from a lot of our partners and customers regarding that. So for anyone new who is on the call today, we've got offices in Bridgend, Bristol and Exeter, and we basically do our services through a consult, transform and protect methodology. And that means that we consult with you to determine your IT strategy. Relevant today, cloud consulting is something that everyone needs a little bit more support on to basically do it with strategy and to do it to align with your business goals, because there's no point moving to new systems if you don't have a clear outline strategy of what you want to get from it, which is hopefully today we'll be able to cover off for you as well. Whilst all using technology is so important, and I'm not saying don't use new technology because we all want to get the most out of the platforms that are available to us, but doing it with cyber security is top of your mind is crucial to making sure that you obviously don't fall vulnerable to anything, which is why partners with Microsoft, we get to provide the most secure cloud solutions for you. So that always takes us into the how we can help transform your business through these new technology. So sorry guys who are customers, because you have heard this a few times before, but just a quick overview of our accreditations, because we're Microsoft Solutions Partner, obviously providing you with the latest updates for all of the Microsoft products. Like today, we won Softfox Partner of the Year 2025, so just another basically celebration to show that we are really understanding of all of the services and the products that we provide through our technology partners, and actually became an Acronis Platinum partner as well, which is really good, significant to our dedication for our cybersecurity services. We're not just offering a one-size solution that fits all, we cater to all of your needs as well. So really quickly, we're just going to discuss some of our cloud offerings today. So before you do anything, before you move to systems, before you adopt something, what's the most important thing? A strategic, how we can meet your goals, how your cloud environment aligns with your actual goals and operational requirements, because like we said, not one size fits all. We need to make sure that we support you throughout the entire journey, and there might be things to change. Ongoing optimization and management is something that we provide at CSG through all of your areas and products. Our expertise as a Microsoft Solutions Partner, just showing that we've got the latest practices from Microsoft, just ensuring that our customers, you guys, benefit with the most up-to-date Azure technologies and security capabilities, which we will discuss a bit later on today. Having support across your workloads really is important to get the most out of all of the different systems. So with regards to your applications, infrastructure, the data that's held there, the cloud native solutions, which just basically ensure that you guys can use Azure for the compute storage, networking, databases, and your AI workloads to make sure you're getting the most out of the systems. Cybersecurity, again, always going back to cybersecurity, will help you improve the security and risk mitigation through this cloud migration. A lot of people are just going to quickly rush, find a cloud solution that maybe they haven't thought about too much because we're all a bit more pressured now to move systems to the cloud. However, CSG are here to make sure that you do it securely and strategically. We also provide vendor management and cost optimization. Obviously, everything comes down to an ROI on your investment, and that's something that we're really here to help you get the most out of and basically getting the servers that are specific to your unique business needs. And with everything, when you move to a new system, we have that ongoing training and support. Luckily, like I said, I'm here with Ed today to really delve into how to get the most out of Azure. And this isn't just a one-time thing. We get ongoing support with all of the systems that you use. So basically, anything you need, we are here to answer and provide. So apologies, my fancy clouds did not fly in this time. However, we're going to have to make do. So the PSTN switch off, we're all hearing about it constantly, but it's basically really pressuring companies to move to a cloud migration and making sure, I think a lot of times, well, people think that it's just going to affect phones. It's just going to affect landline, but lifts, fire alarms, payments, security systems, fax machines, everything that basically you have may be affected. And to replace them, businesses are really looking to Azure connected devices, VoIP systems, Cloud PCs, which again we'll be discussing today, just for that reliability and of course the compliance regulations as well, because that's again a major factor which is pushing people to make the move a bit more. So the cost shock from VMware licensing is pushing UK firms a lot towards Azure virtualization and cloud PCs because you really do get more out of the investment. It's just crazy to think of the amount of services and software that may not work for people, however, they're still paying for, just running in the background or maybe haven't analysed it a lot. CSG are here to help you basically strategize what systems you're using and make sure that you can migrate your workloads to Microsoft Azure, basically to escape on-prem virtualization costs and avoid some expensive with hardware refreshes as well. It just makes it a bit more so as I love that Ed's nodding to me, I feel like I'm doing
No.
a good speech here. Which goes me on to my next point was aging and on-prem servers. Amount of times that companies will discuss, we've had this for 40 years or something like that. Obviously, I'm saying 40 to coincide with the 40th year, but we've had something for a long time. And we're not saying just chuck something away, but CSG actually work with a lot of our partners to recycle and repurpose old technology because obviously the environment is always at the forefront of what we do. But many UK companies are really underestimating the rising burden of maintaining old servers, physical desktops, everything. So with the move into cloud PCs, which we're going to discuss today, it's basically just a way that you can strategize this and no longer have the need for all this on service thing, which really helps the employees be able to work anywhere as well. And also, whenever we say that, work from anywhere securely. So remote and hybrid work requires, again, I'm always going to say it, secure anywhere accessible computing. So while businesses are, let's be honest, hybrid working is here to stay. We're not all going to be in the office all the time, 9 till 5. A lot of people are on the road. A lot of people work from home. That is not going anywhere. And I think a lot more businesses now are getting more confident and comfortable with dealing with the demand for employees to work from home. However, some vulnerable traditional VPN cloud accesses can be a little bit risky. So cloud PCs and being able to access anything securely is something that Azure will be able to provide as well. And that takes me on to the Azure's enterprise grade security and compliances, which are really helping businesses keep up with rising UK threat levels. I mean, cyber attacks in the UK are continuing to rise. It's horrible to say, and I don't like to always remind people about how much of risk it is, but it is. And it's just so important to really put cyber threats into every strategy that you have now. I know it's one of those things that we've heard all the time, but it's no longer an IT issue. It's a full boardroom issue. It's not just the IT manager that has to worry about cyber attacks. It's the general manager. It's the marketing manager. It's everyone because employee awareness and knowledge is your first defense. So getting everyone involved and just talking about it. And we offer phishing threat training, which can be very useful as well. So also the US, I don't know too much on this because so I'm not going to go into it too much, but obviously we'll maybe ask Ed as well to see if he's got some expertise in it. But the UK ESG requirements are basically carbon reduction, on-prem services, and desktop fleets consuming a significant amount of power. It takes up so much power. And with AI as well, data centers, we all hear about how much power they're taking up. Azure is a way that you can use a system that is powered by renewable energy. And Microsoft is being committed to being
Oh
carbon
yeah.
negative by 2030. It's a major focus, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, I can already tell you just on that, the whole kind of Azure network is already carbon negative. It's
Yeah.
already carbon negative, but then with that loftier goal of Microsoft to be carbon neutral, but then being carbon negative by 2030. So it's currently carbon neutral, but then carbon negative by
Yeah.
2030. So yes, Microsoft, that's built into Azure. So absolutely it can help.
Oh, that's brilliant. So yeah, so Cloud PCs, which we're going to talk about as well, they create far lower emissions than local servers. And I mean, just giving back that little bit to the environment, but also it's not just your personal preference, it's more of a demand now. It's more of a strategy in your marketing, in your CSR, and that's something that Azure and Cloud PCs can help with. So quickly, what is the importance of a strategic move to the cloud? Because like I said, every organization is going to be wanting to do this, but we need to do it strategically. We need to make sure that we're really getting the most out of what we're doing. So cloud adoption without strategy, it can lead to risks, waste, and government failures. You may not adhere to the compliance regulations that you think you are by just moving to an unsecure cloud system or something like that. So security and compliance requires expert configuration. I mean, this is obviously all our customers know that we are here to help you with, but it's just really important to have those discussions internally so we can help you with that move. Cloud migration is complex. Anything that's good is obviously going to be a little bit complex, isn't it? So just doing something and just ticking a box isn't going to be a great way to really show that you've got an ROI on your cloud migration, which is why we are here to make sure that you have all of the support for each step of moving to the cloud. I've briefly covered the ethical and sustainable responsibility, but I can't stress enough how important it is for us to really put that at the forefront of our business actions for this year and the next few years. I mean, if we can reach the 2030 carbon neutral thing, that would be amazing. But it does mean that we're all going to have to come together to provide a little bit more support from that. And luckily, Cloud PCs and Azure basically helps to support that massively. Importantly, and finally from me, before I hand over to Ed, it is just making sure that you are consistent with your servers, automated backups, high availability, and resilience to global issues as well. They don't work automatically though. They require the correct setup and they require continuous optimization with things updating, things moving. So cloud experts at CSG will be there with you all step of the way to ensure that they are always working. That means your backups are working, your disaster recoveries, your failover in place. So basically, if something goes wrong, which hopefully it won't, your business stays operational during outages, during a natural disaster, or during something that is not out of your control. And that is all from me. I'm going to pass over to Ed. Thank you so much for listening to my intro, and I'm looking forward to learning a bit more about Azure and Cloud PCs.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Eve. So let's jump into some of those key points. Eve raised a lot of key points that, organizations are really looking for nowadays. Things like continuity, security, these are all very key things. But these are areas where Azure can absolutely help. And we want to discuss some of that. But before we jump into that, I do kind of want to go back to basics a little bit. Because one of the things with Azure, as some of you may or may not know, Azure is an absolutely gigantic product. It is huge. There are so many different moving parts within Azure, and it can be confusing, which is why I want to kind of start off with this question here, which is, what is Azure? Now, some of you may already be familiar with Azure. You might think, well, it's cloud storage. It might be virtual machines, and you'd be absolutely right to say all of those things, but it is all of those things and more. Now, the way Microsoft describes Azure is this: that Azure is a cloud platform that enables your business to build, deploy, and manage applications and services on a consumption basis. And we're going to be zeroing in on that consumption basis piece, because one of the things that Eve mentioned in her introduction is the cost of managing legacy infrastructure. It's only getting more expensive. It's only getting more complex and difficult to manage. So again, being able to move that to a OPEX model, to an OPEX, an operational expenditure model, only paying for the services used. So let's just call it what it is, a pay-as-you-go model, which again makes things such as planning, financing, much easier when it comes to your IT infrastructure. Now, like I said, Azure is gigantic, and I do just have a short video, which I'm hoping is going to play okay on Teams. It does have an incredibly dramatic soundtrack, so bear with it. This is just to introduce just the sheer size and scale of Azure. The fact is that Azure as a product is huge, but globally it is massive as well. Whatever plans you have for your organization down the line in the future, maybe expanding into different areas, new territories, whatever it might be, there are Azure resources globally that can help your organization in any eventuality. Any growth plans that you have, Azure is there to support. So have a quick look at this. Oh, like I said, I wasn't kidding about the dramatic soundtrack there, was I? But you can see just the sheer scale of Azure's infrastructure. Again, Microsoft building this huge interconnected series of data centers, again, because you don't have to, effectively. But what's the benefit in all of this? Well, one of the key things that we are talking about is digital transformation. Now, that is still a term that is probably more relevant today than ever with the dawn of AI and everything like that. It's more important for organizations nowadays to be making sure you are keeping up with these new technologies. From a business competitive perspective, it's absolutely crucial. But what does it actually mean to digitally transform? Well, digital transformation can take many forms. One very simple form of digital transformation was things like going paperless, for example. But digital transformation does have a real impact for your organization. In fact, Microsoft looks at things such as, digital transformation and AI helping in these key areas for your organization. For example, the first one being able to use technology to better engage your customers. I mean, the most successful organizations in the world know that if you can use the technology to better engage your customers in a more efficient or a more dynamic way, then your likelihood for success as an organization grows exponentially. You could be using the technology maybe to optimize or streamline operations, maybe by leveraging AI and automation into your organization to make, repetitive or long drawn out tasks easier and simpler, potentially saving valuable time and money. You could be using the technology to maybe empower your employees. One of the things we're going to be speaking about a bit later is Windows 365, which is a form of virtualization, giving your employees the ability to work safely, securely, remain productive and collaborative from any device, from any location. And in the dawn of the world that we now live in, which is very much a hybrid workplace, and the huge amount of threats that we are seeing from cybercrime and bad actors, things like this, absolutely imperative that we do empower our employees with the tools that they need. And of course, being able to transform our products, or at least in some cases, how those products are delivered to customers. Now, we do have some examples of how some organizations are utilizing this model of digital transformation to change how they deliver their services to their customers and effectively how they run their business. I do just have one more video which I'd like to show you. Normally it's bad form to do slide video, but we have to do it. And this is a customer case study from here in the UK, which makes a nice change. Most time when we look at case studies, they're normally American companies, but this is a UK company and it is Marks and Spencer's. Now I know obviously Marks and Spencer's did have that, devastating cyber attack, but they are looking about how they can, transform their organization in terms of how the business actually works and the business operates. Now, I do just want to show this to you because it's an incredible story of how an organization which began in like 19 something, put it this way, not a great year for computers when the business began, but how they've evolved and changed with the times to build the organization that they have today. Have a look at this and bear in mind all the technology, everything you see in this video, this isn't science fiction. This isn't stuff that's, coming tomorrow. This is all stuff that you can do right now within Azure. It's absolutely amazing. Have a quick look.
Technology is impacting every corner of the globe, even at your local store. Britain's Marks and Spencer is embracing a sweeping transformation across its business by leveraging machine learning, computer vision, and AI to become a digital-first business. One that will weave technology into every touch point, both in its stores and behind the scenes. Every surface, screen, and scanner will not just consume data, but create it, make sense of it, and enable employees to act upon it. The vision is that intelligent edge devices, combined with cloud-based services, will improve customer experiences and optimize operations. Imagine a future where every M&S store worldwide is able to track, manage, and replenish stock levels in real time, and deal with the unexpected, like when an item is accidentally dropped. Imagine a future where computer vision can spot this, log an entry in the stock system, and communicate alerts to the right people. Using Microsoft's cognitive services, M&S can satisfy demand by having the right products in the right places for its customers, and ultimately improve how stores are designed and these same products are promoted. M&S is not just the UK's most beloved retailer. Together with Microsoft, they're using insights for action to build the future of retail.
So again, absolutely incredible stuff that, again, Marks and Spencers are using. And again, all of these tools, things such as cognitive services, AI services, all of these tools are available in Azure, and you can literally buy them, consume them and utilize them within your own organizations. That's one of the great things about Azure. You don't have to build these things yourself. Microsoft already has the models for all of these different things, whatever it is you want to do, and you can just use them within your organization. It's effectively like a marketplace of services, and you just choose the ones that are best for your business. Because nowadays, in the world that we now live, every company is now a software company, and we've seen some true stories of winners and losers when it comes to digital transformation. The fact is, there have been some businesses that have fought back against digital transformation, where they've said, oh no, we don't want to do this, we're going to carry on doing things the way we've always done them because that's always been successful for us. You know, organizations, you really just don't have the luxury of living in that world anymore. You can't stay stagnant in today's world. And we've seen examples, of where this has happened. Take, for example, I'm sure some of you here remember Blockbuster Video. What a golden age that was. You go after school, get a video, get a Mega Drive game. It was fantastic. But Blockbuster, sadly, no longer with us, replaced obviously by Netflix. Blockbuster, some of you know the story that Blockbuster were given a bit of an opportunity around buying into Netflix, or at least buying Netflix at the very beginning for a relatively low amount. But Blockbuster said no, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to carry on doing things the way they have always done them. So, we saw what happened. Blockbuster didn't survive, and Netflix rose to be the industry leader. The industry leaders in taxis is, of course, Uber. One of the industry leaders in hotels is Airbnb. What do all these organizations have in common? They're all software companies. Everyone nowadays is a software company. Regardless of what kind of industry you're in, you are essentially a software company. That is the world in which we now operate. Now, when it comes to choosing a cloud provider, Microsoft obviously isn't the only people out there. There are Google Cloud Services, very good. Amazon Web Services, also very good. And then, of course, there is Azure. But I want to talk about how Azure differentiates from some of its competitors. And there are three key areas in which Azure does have a distinct advantage over its competitors. Just in case any of you are shopping around, maybe you're either looking at or you're utilizing AWS or Google, whatever it might be. I just want to just point out just three areas in which Azure does have a distinct advantage. The first one is something that we call hyperscale, or global hyperscale. And again, this is just a very fancy way of saying global footprint. The fact is that Azure is larger physically than both AWS and Google Cloud combined. In fact, if you were to take all the data centers, if you were to take everything that Google has and everything that Amazon has, and you piled it all together, Azure still has more. So in terms of just coverage, Azure is much larger than its competition. The other area is hybrid as well. And this is a really important point, because Azure is the only consistent hybrid cloud that is out there. Now, just bear in mind for a moment that, before the cloud existed, Microsoft existed as, all of its products were on-prem, things like Windows Server, software, things like Microsoft Office and stuff like that. It was all on-prem. Now, when Microsoft built Azure, they built the cloud to work hand in hand with all of its on-prem stuff. They designed it this way. Now, this is good for us as customers, because some clouds would like you to do your migration or move everything into the cloud all at once. And that's just not feasible for many of us. We don't have the time to be able to just do an entire site migration over the course of a weekend. One of the great things about Azure is that it supports this hybrid environment. So if you do have currently a mixture of on-prem and cloud stuff, you can move things over to the cloud as you want. So you don't have to worry about moving entire things. You can move slowly, workloads at a time. You can move to the cloud at a pace that suits you, which again makes migrations, a bit more streamlined, a bit smoother, a bit easier to manage as well. So it does have that flexibility. And some people, they want to use both. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you don't want to give up all of your on-prem infrastructure at the moment. And with Azure, you don't have to. They're not going to force you to do this or anything. If you want to keep some of your on-prem infrastructure and move stuff to the cloud, absolutely. And everything will work together seamlessly, as if it was all together in the same room. There's no differentiation between your hybrid and your cloud stuff working and talking together, because that's the way it was designed and built. The other side of Azure as well is global compliance. In fact, Microsoft refers to Azure as the world's most compliant cloud. And that's because Azure meets more standards of industry and global compliance than any other cloud vendor. That's not to say that Google and Amazon Web Services aren't secure, of course not. But Azure meets more standards. And if you are interested in looking this stuff up for yourself, there is a fantastic website which you can check out. It is called the Microsoft Trust Center. You can find that if you just go on to Google, other search engines are available, and just type in, Microsoft Trust Center. It's not just for Azure, it's for everything Microsoft, but you will be able to see all the standards of industry and global compliance and find out what that stuff means. If you work in a very specific industry that has some very specific compliance terms that need to be met, then the Trust Center is a place where you can find all that great information. One of the other advantages that Azure has over some of its competitors are SLAs. Now, you're all familiar with SLAs. Now, for the longest time, Amazon Web Services didn't actually offer any SLAs. I know, surprising. They do now, but they don't offer as many SLAs around their products as Azure does. So AWS will offer SLAs, but only on certain features, certain levels of functionality, certain products within their stack, whereas Azure offers SLA coverage around pretty much everything. And these are financially backed SLAs as well. So this is a guarantee that a service, the uptime will be kept. And if it drops below the predetermined uptime, which in some cases is 99.9 or 99.95, you will be refunded. You will get money back effectively. You will get service credit back if the service were to drop. So these are financially backed SLAs from Microsoft. Again, we talk about things such as business continuity and everything else. Microsoft is committed to making sure the uptime of your organization remains at an incredibly high standard. So why should we consider the cloud in the first place? Well, I want to give you 3 core reasons why going to the cloud is a good thing, why moving into Azure. First of all, agility and speed. And now when I talk about agility and speed, I'm not just talking about, data transfers or anything like that. I'm talking about reaction time. I'm talking about time to market. I'm talking about agility. In a survey that was done a little while ago from customers that made the move to Azure, when asked what was the driving force, what was the driving reason behind making this move into Azure, you'd think a lot of people would have said money. Oh, we moved to Azure because it's cheaper. In fact, no, that wasn't it. Actually, agility was given as one of the key reasons that people made this move to Azure, especially, in this post-COVID world, where business now moves quicker than it ever has before, where organizations need to make decisions and implement those changes incredibly fast. Azure gives you that ability to do that. If you wanted to open a new office, maybe somewhere up the other end of the country to where you are, and you were doing it all with physical infrastructure, think how long that would take. You'd need to get the stuff ordered, it would have to be delivered, then it would need to be set up, need to be tested. All of this stuff needs to be done first, and that could be maybe a week or 2, depending on if there's backlogs of equipment or anything like that. It could take ages. Whereas with Azure, if I needed to spin up additional resources in another part of the world, it could literally be done in less than a day. That's agility. for an organization to be able to pivot and change direction. Say something goes the other way, maybe services aren't required anymore. That's where elasticity comes into it. Because with physical infrastructure, you can scale that up, of course you can, but you can't scale down with physical infrastructure. You can't unbuy a server, you can't unbuy a hard drive. Once you've got it, you better use it, otherwise it's a massive case of underutilization. At least with Azure, if your business does make some kind of change that requires you don't need these services anymore, with Azure you just turn it off. And because it's all built on that consumption pay-as-you-go model, if you're not paying for it, if you're not using it, you're not paying for it. So again, you instantly save money. Now that elastic compute model ties nicely into the economics of Azure as well. Pay for what you use, don't pay for what you don't use. But it does go a little bit further than that. Eve was mentioning earlier in her intro that, sometimes we've got physical infrastructure that we've had for many years, and that, physical IT equipment, it degrades over time. A server that was bought 5, 6, 7 years ago isn't going to be as sprightly as one that was bought today. We know this. We see this all the time with our mobile phones and other technology. So the cost of then just maintaining that stuff, updating it, refreshing it, it gets expensive. One of the great things about Azure is that Microsoft is constantly refreshing its data centers with the latest compute, networking, and storage solutions. It's evergreen, which means you are always going to be using the latest and greatest compute technology when you're with Azure. So you're always going to be using the latest stuff. And again, you don't have to pay for that. Microsoft is constantly refreshing its stuff, so you constantly get the best possible experience. So that ties also into that whole economics piece. But I did mention earlier that Azure is a massive product. It's huge. And this slide, isn't even everything. This is kind of just outlining, what some of the things in Azure are. And one of the things where it really starts to separate, you can see that we've got our data infrastructure layer, so our data centers, then you've got your infrastructure services, compute, storage, networking. But here's the really cool bit. Then you've got all of the platform services as well. Remember we saw the Marks and Spencer video with things such as cognitive services, computers with cameras that can see and recognize and reason and make decisions. All of that stuff comes from things such as the intelligence services within Microsoft's platform. And again, all of this stuff is there. It's pre-built. It's there for you to use. You can tinker, you can change it, but it's already there. So again, you've just got this pick of this marketplace full of solutions. Now, Amazon Web Services, they don't really do platform in the same way that Microsoft does. So Microsoft has always been around, full stack, infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. Whereas Amazon Web Services, they always kind of focused more on infrastructure. That was kind of their main area of focus. But this is the platform area. That's really where it stands it apart. And we're going to talk more about this in a moment. But with a solution stack that's as complex as this, it's easy to understand that you might look at this and think, "Oof, where do I start? Where do we even begin?" Well, this is where I want to talk about some of the migration and modernization triggers within Azure. We've got things around backup, storage, disaster recovery, virtualization with things like Windows 365, web hosting, servers. And, for some of you within your organizations, there might be some of these areas that you are focused on at the moment. It could be things such as business continuity. So you might be interested in disaster recovery. Maybe some of you are interested in security. Maybe some of you have got existing on-prem servers. So maybe you're looking at things such as server migrations, for example. So there are some areas in which we can get started with Azure. And like I said, it's built to be hybrid as well. So you don't have to do everything all at once. You can start moving to the cloud at your own pace. So again, no one, not CSG or Microsoft, is saying you've got to do all this now. You can move, like I said, at a pace that suits you. But We spoke about innovation, the changing world in which we live. We're already seeing the huge rise in AI. Maybe some of you on this call have already maybe started dabbling in AI. Maybe you're using ChatGPT in your personal lives. Maybe some of you are utilizing things such as Copilot within your organization, or maybe even having cursory conversations about deploying Copilot. Well, again, if that's the case, then you are already a company that is looking forward. You are looking ahead. You are looking at innovation. But innovation doesn't stop with things just like, M365 Copilot, for example. There's lots of things that we spoke about in that whole digital transformation circle, things such as automation, that sort of thing, where again, Azure can absolutely help organizations like yours be AI ready and be ready for the world that we're moving into. And then moving forward within Azure is a really cost-effective way of doing it. In fact, we talk about things such as, return on investments. And of course, everyone wants to see an ROI on the services that they buy. But we can actually save up to 80% in costs. A lot of that coming from licensing over Amazon Web Services. In terms of security as well, moving to Azure, a lot of customers, again, making this move because Azure is secure. I'll talk more about security in just a moment. And of course, being AI ready. But one of the main benefits of Azure and making that migration is that even though I show you those platform services earlier, which list loads of solutions, Microsoft isn't trying to lock you into its platform. Okay, so Microsoft is very much open standards first. So yeah, we've got all these platform services that you can use, but if you want to bring your own applications, workloads, databases, containers, whatever it might be, for whatever company they're from, you can just use Azure Compute and then use your own stack, whatever that stack looks like, and Microsoft will support it. So this is a really important thing. Some other clouds will want to try and lock you into their platform and into their licensing models. Microsoft isn't doing that with Azure. You can literally bring your own tool, solution, stack, and just use Microsoft's compute. And some of the main savings do come from things such as server or SQL server migrations. Now, I'm sure many of you on this call are utilizing Windows Server, or some of you using SQL in some way, shape, or form. And if you are utilizing a physical on-prem server, and again, depending on the age of that server, if it's got any kind of like major maintenance or updates, or if it's starting to come to the end of its life, migrating that server and its workloads into Azure could be a really good thing to do, because not only does it reduce the TCO, the total cost of ownership, everything that goes around supporting physical on-prem infrastructure. You've got the costs of maintenance, updates, patching, repairs, all of these things. And of course, the actual physical space to keep the thing in as well. Moving all of that into Azure can save you a significant amount on that whole TCO. But there are other benefits and other savings that can be made moving your server workloads into Azure. And it's something that Microsoft call Azure Hybrid Rights Use Benefit. And effectively, this is a licensing model which allows you to bring your existing server licensing with you. That means you don't need to buy another Windows Server license. If you were to migrate your physical server into a Windows Server in AWS, you would have to buy all the licenses again. So you would be doubling down on the licensing that you were paying for this and that, double bubble. But you're not having to do that with Azure. You can just migrate, along with the workloads, migrate the licensing over as well, which again can save a significant amount of money. And this is the same for SQL Server as well. So whether you're using Windows or SQL Server, again, bring your workloads over and bring your licensing with you. And it's because of this that we mention that those massive savings can be made by making that move over into Azure for either your server or your SQL workloads. And again, we've got, Azure can be up to 5 times more expensive. You can save 85% over standard pay-as-you-go rates if you use things such as the server and SQL licenses. So again, there are some significant savings that can be made. One of the other things that I do want to discuss as well, which is something Eve mentioned towards the end of her introduction, which was around business continuity. Do you know, actually, I've just glanced up. Gaynor, sorry, I wasn't ignoring your question. I've literally just glanced up and I've just seen it. So I'm wondering how much Microsoft are investing in the protection sensors from drones and other physical attack following the video sensor, the current climate. Yeah, that is a fantastic question. That is, That is a very good point. Do you know what? There is a longer version of this presentation, which we're not actually doing. So we're doing a bit of a cut down one. But in the longer version of the presentation, we do talk about the physical layer of security within Azure. I'll talk more about security in a moment, but Microsoft does do a huge amount to protect its sites. Now, I don't know exactly what they're doing from things such as drones, for example, but I can tell you the actual physical data center sites, it's like a fortress going in there. You know, you've got high security perimeter fences, you've got, you know, gates, guards, you've got biometric authentication, all sorts of things. You've got weights, scales that to move through into one area into another. Basically, going to a Microsoft data center is like going to an airport, but without the hassle of having a nice holiday at the end of it, effectively. You get to go through everything else, scanners, pat downs, everything else. But yeah, you just don't go anywhere sunny. I don't specifically know what's happening in terms of drone and other physical attacks. I'm not too sure. I do know that in different countries, so data centers outside the UK where laws are different, there will be armed security. So I know that obviously in America and in some data centers in Europe, they are armed security guards that are walking perimeter on these data center sites, because a lot of these data centers are considered as part of the national critical infrastructure. For example, the data centers in the UK, one of the biggest customers is the MOD. I will assume there is something, but I don't know if they've detailed it. But really good question. Thank you for that, Gaynor. We'll look into any more information we can find and we'll get that to you. Thank you. Okay, back to backup, storage, and disaster recovery. Now, back in the day, when we talk around, you know, these sorts of things, especially disaster recovery solutions, disaster recovery was always wildly expensive because to have a disaster recovery solution, you needed to be a company that was rich enough to buy everything twice. And that's why disaster recovery solutions, you know, for the most part, were only for the massive, you know, global enterprises, because they were the only ones that could afford to do this. Most SMBs couldn't afford to buy another server for just in case. You know, they just didn't have the funds or to be able to do such a thing. So I do want to talk around business continuity, disaster recovery, and of course, you know, storage and backups. Now, you know, storage and backup, you know, these are really easy ways to, you know, start seeing, you know, value from Azure. You know, being able to have I don't know how many of you are utilizing, you know, physical storage methods, you know, whether we're talking physical drives, you know, within the office, or physical drives within your server stack, or whatever it might be. But you know that if you've ever kind of hit a storage limit, you know, that becomes a bit of a pain, because whatever it is you're doing, you can't continue to do it because you've got no more storage left. So what have you got to do? You've got to buy some more storage. You've got to wait for it to be delivered. You've got to install it, test it, and then and only then can you continue doing the job you were doing. And that could be potentially days. Now, the whole idea with Azure is to offer, you know, scalable storage solutions, and storage solutions of different type, whether it's blob storage, files, queues, whatever it might be. And the whole idea is to allow you just to keep working. You hit a storage limit, hey, we need more storage. You go into the Azure console, dial up another 100 terabytes, and within seconds, you just continue with your work. So again, we're talking about agility back to organizations, not getting stumped by little roadblocks of certain types of IT issues. Same thing comes with backups as well. We now live in a world of GDPR where, you know, we've got to keep records, you know, for X amount of time. And if people want to know what data we have on them, we've got to share it. And if they want that data deleted, we have to be able to remove it. Now, when we talk about archived information, you know, I still know some companies, I'm not saying anyone on this call is doing it, but I know of some companies that are still using tapes Tapes, yeah, for their backups. And again, like, don't feel bad if you're one of them. I get why tapes are. I get why people use tapes, because they're cost effective. They don't cost very much money, and they also benefit from the air gap. If a tape is just sat there on a desk, you can't hack it. You can't steal any data off of it. The only problem is the tape, though it can't be hacked, it's only vulnerable to everything else. It can be lost, it can be stolen, crushed, burned, whatever. That data can be destroyed. And if you have to keep that data as part of your backups for a certain amount of time, then that could potentially be a risk. So being able to have a backup solution within Azure for all your archived or all of your cold data, if you need to reference it, you can access it quickly. If somebody makes a mistake and deletes the wrong thing from the backup, you can just do point-in-time recoveries and get this stuff back. So again, offering that agility and business continuity back to organizations. But then there's Azure Site Recovery. Now, I do love this because, like I said, with traditional disaster recovery solutions, only the people that could buy everything twice were the people that could have it, which, doesn't seem fair. And nowadays, Eve mentioned it as well, and I don't really want to bang on about it either, but 2025 wasn't a great year for UK cyber attacks, was it? So really, we do need solutions in place that can, in the event of natural disasters or cyber attacks, something we can fall back to. And this is where Azure Site Recovery comes in. So effectively, in a nutshell, with Azure Site Recovery, whether you are completely on-prem or whatever, even if you're not even using the cloud at the moment, you can still use Azure Site Recovery. Effectively, what we would do, in a nutshell, this is oversimplified, by the way, there's more to it than this, but just to oversimplify it, we build a replica of your company's infrastructure in the cloud. So we build a digital replica of that. All of your stuff, all of your data, everything, we build this replica. And this replica can be refreshed every 15, 20 minutes. So it's always the latest, most freshest version of your infrastructure that is then up there in the cloud. So that's great. How much does this cost? Well, remember, you only pay for stuff in Azure when you're using it. This digital replica that we've built on the cloud is not switched on. So it's not switched on, so it's not costing any money from an operational standpoint. It still costs money because you're going to pay for the footprint, the amount of data that is actually consuming. That would be your monthly cost, which I can tell you is significantly less than having to buy and double up on all of your infrastructure. So again, you're going to pay for the storage footprint of this digital replica. Now, let's say the worst happened, a biblical flood comes and washes away your office. Now, as soon as that sever is cut between, say, the primary sites, I'll just scribble on there, this is now gone. This doesn't get a signal from the primary site to say, hey, we're still here. And if it doesn't get that, it will automatically spin up and start turning everything on. That's when you start paying. Remember I said the consumption thing? Once everything starts switching on, that's when obviously the cost then comes in. But here's the good thing. Even though your business has just been washed away in a flood, your business, as far as your customers are concerned, is A-OK, because your website pop back on, your CRM, your ordering system, all of your data, files, all of that stuff is still fully accessible from the cloud location. So I would almost think of Azure Site Recovery as business insurance. I shouldn't call it business insurance. That's kind of what it is. It's that insurance that if something happens, and in the current climate of cyber attacks and everything else, we should, all businesses, we should all be prepared that if something happens, then the business continues. Because 40% of businesses, 40% don't actually get back on their feet after something happens. Whether it's an attack or whatever it might be, 40% of businesses don't recover because customers go elsewhere. So Azure Site Recovery, again, I would say just giving you, that peace of mind that your business is protected from these things, that you can roll back onto the cloud or onto an older version, again, if something bad were to happen. And speaking of bad things happening, we have to talk about security within Azure. I mean, how secure is Azure? Well, we already mentioned that Microsoft already refers to itself as the world's most trusted and compliant cloud based on the amount of industry global compliance standards that it meets. But Microsoft does have some pretty good tricks up its sleeve when it comes to security. Now, I don't know how many people on this call would actually consider Microsoft a security company. I know some people, when they think of Microsoft, they think of Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Xbox, but they don't necessarily think of security. Well, it might surprise you to know that Microsoft is not only is an industry recognized security company, but it's actually one of the world's biggest security companies. And a lot of it comes from this. This is called the Intelligent Security Graph. Now, what is the Intelligent Security Graph? Well, look, just think for a minute about all the Microsoft services that are out there in the world. Think about the millions of people around the world who use M365 every single day. Think about the millions of people using Azure. Think about the millions of people using Windows. Think about the millions of people who play Xbox, the hundreds of people who use Bing. Think about all this, not just commercial, but consumer as well. Microsoft is collecting data and threat signals from all of these different sources, commercial and consumer, to feed back to Microsoft, to basically give Microsoft a really good understanding of what the global threat landscape looks like. This is almost like Microsoft's crystal ball to understand what the world looks like from a cyber threat perspective. And other security companies only wish they had this level of global optics. It's just because Microsoft is obviously out there in pretty much everything, every business, every home around the world. Microsoft has got this huge pool of data in which to draw from, which again, no other security company has that level of visibility, that level of global optics. Microsoft are analyzing to the tune of approximately 65 trillion threat signals every single day. And again, they're pulling that data from all of these different sources. And that, again, allowing them to understand what the threats are, allows Microsoft to proactively put solutions in place before things turn into a really bad situation. And one of the things that we have seen, in terms of the rise of cyber attacks, is that cyber attacks have now become a crime. No, not crime, now become a crime. There's always been a crime, have now become a business. It's become industrialized. It's a model unto itself. In fact, you can go onto the dark web with nothing more than a credit card, and you can buy attacks and have them pointed wherever you want. Look at this. You can rent an attacker for a job for 250 quid. You can buy devices that have already been compromised. You can buy a compromised PC from 13 cents. You can buy stolen passwords, 97p for 1,000, or if you want to be thrifty about it, 150 quid for 400 million stolen passwords. That is what we're up against. This is a multi-trillion-dollar a year industry. And a lot of global crime, global organized crime organizations have actually started to move into cybercrime because it's so profitable. And this is not career advice for anyone, but it's just to tell you this is what we're up against. Every organization is up against it. Cybercrime is a business, and that business is booming. That is why we would recommend that you choose the only cloud platform that is built by a security company, and that's Azure. It is the only cloud company built by an industry recognized security company, and not just industry recognized. According to Forrester, Gartner, the IDC, industry leading security company. Some of you might think, well, that sounds a bit like you're asking me to put all my eggs in one basket there, Ed. And I get that, the whole eggs in one basket thing. That's a cautionary tale of a single point of failure, isn't it? If you've got all your eggs in a lovely basket and that handle snaps, basket falls, or the eggs smash, terrible days. But the thing is with Azure and Microsoft generally is that it's not just one element of security. Microsoft approaches security from a model that it refers to as defense in depth. So again, across different areas, so security and management, app security, data security, network security, you've got all of these different tools and solutions that sits under everything. So, it's not a single point of failure. And the sheer amount of organizations that are already invested in Azure. And when I say organizations, I'm talking, like the US Department of Defense, the UK's Ministry of Defense, they all use Azure, and they are using it for a reason. And the reason is the high levels of security and compliance that Azure brings. So if it's good enough for the US DoD, for the UK's MOD, and huge areas of the UK government, is it good enough for your business? So I do just want to move on to Windows 365. I know we're getting close to time, but in this modern hybrid world that we now live in, where we've got people working from different locations, different devices, different networks, it can be challenging for organizations to make sure that people are staying compliant and they are staying secure. Hybrid work, for the most part, I would say that most people enjoy living in a hybrid work world, but that doesn't mean that it didn't come without its challenges, So, with this new concept. So there are basically three ways in which you can consume Windows 11 in today's world. You can either do it natively on just a laptop with Windows built into it. You can use cloud virtualization, and you've got things such as Citrix and VMware and stuff like that. But what I want to introduce you to is this concept here, which is the Cloud PC, otherwise known as Windows 365. And what Windows 365 is, it is a simple turnkey solution. So you can literally go onto the site and you say, right, I want a laptop with this much RAM, this much storage, running Windows 11, and that's it. So you literally put in the spec of the machine that you want. It will calculate what the monthly cost of that machine would be. So it might be for 16 gig of RAM, 500 gig hard drive, Windows 11, whatever it might be. Okay, that machine's going to cost, 10 quid a month or whatever it might be. And that's your cost. You have now got a cloud PC that can be accessed from any device, whether it's a mobile phone, an Apple iPad, a normal laptop or desktop, whatever it might be. If it's a device with a web browser, it can access the cloud PC. Now, this is brilliant for organizations that need to be able to adapt to the world that we now live in terms of things such as, remote and hybrid work, for example. Maybe I've got elastic workforces. Maybe some of you work in organizations where you've got busy periods, maybe over Christmas or over summer. That is the peak time in your business. And if you do work in an organization that does have industrial peaks in it, you'll know that it's a nightmare when you've got to bring in, we've got to hire 10 new staff, we've got to get them laptops, we've got the laptops set up and configured, and policies and security and all the software that they need. It's a long drawn out process. Imagine I hire 10 people for a Christmas campaign. I can literally within seconds go onto the thing, go, right, I need 10 laptops, all with this, all with this, all with this, it creates the laptops and all the logins. So I just say to my new staff, here's the login to your cloud PC. Bring your laptop from home or your iPad or your phone, whatever device you've got lying around, and that is what you use. And because it's all hosted in the cloud, I, the company, have full control over this. I can set policies that say, okay, you can't screenshot anything. You can't do screen recording. You can't copy and paste something from the virtual session onto your physical hard drive. I can lock everything down so things can only be done in that virtual session. It doesn't interfere with the actual device that it's being worked on. Also consider the benefits that if somebody was out and about and their phone was, or their laptop or whatever it might be, was lost or stolen. Yeah, it still sucks, but at least I know there is no corporate data on that device because it was all being accessed from the cloud PC on that device. No company data is on that. So again, it meets a lot of high standards for organizations looking to meet things around, security, compliance, hybrid work, elastic workforces. It ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of customers. And this is kind of, just kind of reiterating some of those same things as well. thing. But I do want to mention things like high capacity computing. I've mentioned seasonal workers and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that you can't build a cloud PC that is very powerful. Imagine you've got a laptop and your laptop is not very powerful, and you don't need it to be because you only use it for office stuff. Like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, that sort of thing. But say from time to time, you need to do something that is quite hardcore. Maybe you're into like coding, or you're processing vast amounts of data that your computer just can't handle because it's just too weak to do so. You could literally have a cloud PC that when you need it, you just fire it up and go, right, I need to crunch all of this data. It can do that in a fraction of the time that your PC could do it. And then once you're done with it, you just turn it off again and just go back to your normal device. So again, it can be used in many different ways. When we think about virtualization, it's very easy to think of it in terms of black and white terms. There is a huge gray area that sits in between as well. It doesn't have to be either you're using it on your laptop or you're using it in the cloud. There is this element where both can come into play. And again, some of the main value around this is around, information workers, frontline especially, and of course, temporary work as well. And again, I don't know how many of you ever hire anyone in a temporary capacity, but again, this is absolutely wonderful for this. I do just have one more video I would like to show. It is an American case study. It comes from a company called BPO American. They are a business outsourcing call center. They've got staff all over the US, and they're a call center, but a call center where, no one's actually working in the call center. People are dotted, all over the place. So again, we've got people dealing with customer information, credit card numbers, all kinds of sensitive stuff. So watch this video and see why Windows 365 and the Cloud PC was right for this company. Have a quick look.
BPO American is a full-service contact center.
We like to be able to represent your company as if your customer was calling your business. 90% of our company is remote workers.
The challenge had to do with having remote agents work in a capacity where they're able to maintain security and safety of our data and do that in such a way that it is cost-effective and efficient. When we started working with IMS, we were able to solve that with Windows 365. Windows 365 allows BPO American and its agents to utilize a wide variety of devices.
Their metrics was, can I have a user ready to go in less than an hour? Today, that's happening. 3 years ago, it would take them a week. Windows 365 gives a single location to access all of your data. I can go to one spot, one portal, and access all of that from a common interface, which is a Windows 11 interface.
IMS Solutions Group utilized both Windows 365 and Microsoft 365 Business Premium to deliver the secure desktop experience, along with the information protection, the compliance features, the secure email system, all of the capabilities of a modern workforce. It has a predictable cost. It can be easily managed with Endpoint Manager. It utilizes security from Azure Active Directory.
We're dealing with HIPAA information. We're dealing with credit cards, a lot of personal information. Since the agents are logged into the Cloud PC, anything that they type in stays inside that environment. Nothing leaves that environment because they cannot take a screenshot, they cannot copy and paste, they can't screen record. It's all safe within the Cloud PC.
The strength of security with Windows 365 is very critical because we have been tasked with keeping our customers' data safe and exceeding the security protocols that they've put forward. The insights are really powerful because the Endpoint Manager and the various reporting mechanisms that come with Windows 365 give us a huge amount of data. We feel like we're going to be able to grow with Windows 365.
Okay, that's it from me. So I'm going to throw you back over to Eve. Eve, over to you.
Thank you so much. And I apologise, but we do have a Q&A section now, so you're not off the record just yet. But thank you so much for everyone joining today. It was great to have that really, really insightful background work of how it works, because I think most of the time people just want to basically understand what's going on in the background, don't they? Just so they can get better access to use the devices that they are using every day. So Thank you so much for joining, everyone. And we're just going to do some questions. I know it's gone past 12, but for all of you who are still with us, thank you for staying with us. Any questions that pop to mind as well, please feel free to drop them in the chat. So the first one is around devices, constantly updating these days, aren't they, Ed? You're constantly having to do device update, and it can be frustrating and annoying. But how does Azure reduce downtime throughout these updates?
Well, with things such as, like updates and everything else, when we talk about things that are as a service, and you've seen that, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, you could basically replace as a service with not my problem. Because it's not your problem anymore, because Microsoft takes over all of that for you. All of the time that you had to spend doing updates, patching, maintenance, all of these things, Microsoft takes that load away. So you just have to focus on your business objectives, your business goals, all the firefighting around solutions. Again, with Azure, it is not your problem.
Brilliant. Great response to that, because I think there's a lot of people mind at rest with that. So how does Azure Site Recovery ensure data consistency? How can we make sure that what we're putting in coming out?
So with Azure Site Recovery, in terms of data consistency, in terms of making sure that everything is properly synchronized between, yeah, absolutely. Well, again, this is where CSG can absolutely help. So CSG, they have done this for many customers, and making sure that when we're configuring Azure Site Recovery, the areas of the cloud that we need to, the areas of your on-prem infrastructure that need to be synchronized, we can make sure that all of that stuff is done. So effectively, you will have that digital replica. And what we're able to do as well is, we can run tests. We can run tests on this. We'll run it like a fire drill. Remember at school, you have your fire drills and stuff like that. You have them at work as well. I haven't worked in an office for ages, so I forget that we actually do that outside of schools nowadays. But we can do that. We can run a fire drill just to make sure that everything spins up as it should. Make sure that everything is there as it should be. So it's all in the setup. And like Eve said at the beginning, it's this stuff isn't magic. It takes people that they know what they're doing. This is where CSG can absolutely help get all of this stuff planned out for you. And then we can test it. We can show you the results that everything spun up within, 6.2 seconds. Everything was there. Everything was accounted for. So yeah. Sorry, that was a really rambling answer there. I apologize.
But again, I noticed as well the network mapping was a big part of it. And I just want to know, how does it support any failover, really?
The network mapping.
Yeah, there's a question here about network mapping. Don't
Where
know
are you
if
seeing
this
these questions? I'm not. I don't
someone a
understand
bit too. We have questions sent through before the webinar to those who can't join, and then we like to cover them in then, because we send recordings to our
this. Yeah.
customers after.
The network mapping on that one, I'll have to defer to somebody more technical than me on that one, I'm afraid.
I think we're just having a customer who's trying to impress with their knowledge, to be honest.
no,
I think they were just trying to.
It's probably a fine question, but I think Ricky, I think that is one for Ricky there.
We've also got someone from the legal sector, and they're just wondering how Azure supports compliance standards, maybe not specific to the legal sector, but just in general.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, we showed we showed that slide earlier on that showed all the compliance industry and regulatory compliance. I can't cite any of the actual compliance standards off the top of my head, but I can already tell you that we personally work with a number of legal customers who are already very heavily invested into Azure and both M365. What I would recommend though is if you do want to find stuff around specific industry compliance, then do check out the Microsoft Trust Center, because you can literally search by industry and it will tell you what regulations Microsoft meet around certain products. So I can't cite off the top of my head, but the resource is there, and it's the Trust Center.
That's very useful. And we mentioned Cloud PCs. So just a bit about Cloud PCs and how they differ from the AVD.
So yeah, so there is a bit of a difference. So it really, I mean, between AVD and between cloud PCs, it is two sides of the same coin. It is virtualization. The only thing that differs is really kind of how it's managed and how it's paid for. So for example, with Azure Virtual Desktop, it's consumption based. So you will be paying X amount per hour for every hour that machine is turned on. With Windows 365 and the cloud PC, it's a fixed cost. So I create a machine of a certain specification. This is the monthly cost of that machine, and that's what the price would be. Whether I use it a little or whether I use it a lot, the price is the same. So from a financial forecasting perspective, it's really easy. Also, to spin up an Azure Virtual Desktop machine, that is quite a lot to do. With the cloud PC, it's a turnkey solution. It's very straightforward to get fired up with the cloud PC. So the cloud PC does offer, much greater levels of simplicity over Azure Virtual Desktop.
Thank you again, Ed. It's been an absolute pleasure having you present to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening. The recording of this will be sent across to attendees, so don't worry if there's something that you want to revisit throughout. Once again, it's been a pleasure. Thank you all, and hope you have a lovely rest of your day, guys.